Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk about DEI, thousands of layoffs. What is this going to mean? But DEI really is the flower, but the branch and the root, affirmative action, fairness, equality. Although it has been painted as an initiative that advantaged black people primarily. Actually, white women come before everybody. It really opened the doors for everyone. Remember, even through the 70s, all women needed to have a cosigner when you purchased a home. It just seems unbelievable now, but really, we've had to make a lot of advances in the space for gender rights. But no one's really thinking about that right now. What about people who are physically challenged? That's what DEI and affirmative action, it helps them. It helps everybody. Everybody. For some reason, though, there's been this pushback. My father, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, says the slave masters never retire. Well, that is true. And so there's been a major pushback against the advances of the civil rights movement, which helped everybody in America. Ending slavery helped everybody in America. And so now, of course, in the late 70s, we had the Bakke decision, which effectively, that was the first huge boulder that was collapsing affirmative action. And now it has been dismantled, and we're watching it with DEI. So we want to talk about that right now. And then not only have thousands of civil servants, they've been laid off with paid leave, but we know what's coming next. They're going to be fired. What will that mean? How will the government work? Well, Larry Ellison and the big tech bros are saying, led by Elon Musk and Doge, that we can put AI in their place. We're going to put, effectively, for those laypersons like you and me, they're going to put computers in their place. How's that going to work? How is that going to work? How's this transhuman economy and world going to work? I don't think it is. But let's talk about it. Because indeed, when you look at the fallout behind Doge, Vivek Ramaswamy was looking at policy. That was his track. But, and regulations and all of that. But what Elon Musk was looking at was spending. And underneath the spending was how we're going to allocate the dollars and who was going to be fired so we could put AI in place. That's really been his bailiwick. And so now you have Larry Ellison from Oracle, who has seen him, who has heard his voice in decades. Well, he's talking about uh, getting us all exams so that we can find out whether we have cancer or not. Think about that. And we can, attack your cancer, with a shot. Whoa, wait a minute. This is like a bridge too far, everybody. I want to know what's going on, really. But let's talk about affirmative action and DEI. You cannot separate the two. You got to look at them all, and we have to look at them legally, socially, politically. What does all of this mean? I am Santita Jackson. This is AM 950 Radio. I want you to go to Blue Sky at santitajackson.bsky.social. Santita Jackson, yeah, just look me up and there I am. And then, of course, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Robert's over there. Miss Wanda, try and hop on over there down there in North Carolina. We're going to be talking about North Carolina again because many of you are in the midst of a very, very cold winter. And those storms that hit late last year, people are in tents. People are in mobile homes that don't have enough heat. As we're cutting checks that are going all over the country, that are going all over the world, excuse me. What about the people of North Carolina and Tennessee? What about the people in California? What about? We got a lot to discuss today. So I want to hear from you. Come on, everybody. The Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Like and share, like and share. And oh, what about this? Of course, now that the Spanish language portal on the White House website has been eliminated, whitehouse.gov. So if you wanted to find out what was going on or different programs, if you needed to find out what was going on in the executive branch, you go to whitehouse.gov. Well, if you speak Spanish, you can't do that anymore. And guess what they had in the place of the Spanish language? There was a message, literally, go home. You cannot make this stuff up. Attorney Terry O'Neill, President Emeritus of the National Organization of Women. Attorney Daryl Jones. Of course, you are on your own show with Attorney Barbara Arnwine every Tuesday on WOL. And of course, at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And of course, you've been in Brunswick, Georgia. We're going to have another show we can talk about prosecutorial misconduct in the Ahmaud Arbery case, because that is still ongoing. We're still looking for justice for them. We've got to talk about that, because the prosecutorial misconduct in that case is absolutely stunning. Stunning. But we've got to get some legal understanding of DEI and affirmative action from you and Attorney Mark Fancher today, brilliant civil libertarian. And of course, you are the chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition, Attorney Daryl Jones, and Ariel Gold, Fellowship of Reconciliation. I don't know what else to say. Here we go. Let me start with you, Attorney Daryl Jones. DEI, what is it? Affirmative action, and I'm going to pivot to you on that in particular, Mark Fancher, because we need to know what we're looking at. Mm-hmm. And in so many jobs, and then this is just in the first blush. We don't know. We really don't know what's coming next. We know a lot. We know a lot of opportunity is going to be lost. So talk to me. What do you make of this ending of all these programs? I mean, literally overnight, Attorney Daryl Jones.
Right. And thank you, Santita. And I think it's best to understand it if we look at it in its historical context, right? So when we start looking at the affirmative action policy that was put in place, prior to that, there was nothing that was there. Prior to that, there was just really blatant discrimination, not giving African Americans and other minorities the opportunity to be hired and to be, enrolled in schools and things like that. It was not there. Race wasn't even necessarily considered. They just did what they wanted to do. The affirmative action policy came about as a step to sort of address some of the wrongs that had been occurred to African Americans and other minority-based groups at that time. And so the concept was for there to be an affirmative act to affirmatively go after African Americans and other marginalized folks, to give them the opportunity to be in the schools, to have the employment, to be trying to place them on equal footing, recognizing that at the beginning of the race, if you would sort of imagine it as a track race, right? That at the beginning of the track race, that they had put a shackle around one runner, and other runner was already going around the track, and then at some point that shackle is taken off the runner, and they're told, well, now you can compete. Well, obviously the runner that had the advance in running knows the track, knows the circles, knows where to hit it and everything else. The one that was just unshackled is just learning the way. Affirmative action was supposed to be a way of moving that shackled runner, that wrong runner, forward to assist them in gaining and catching up, so that they would have access to opportunities and other pieces that were there. Now, what happened historically, right, was that at one point they did what they call quotas, where they had set-asides that were put in place where there's a specific number or a specific percentage that had to be filled with African Americans or other marginalized groups. That subsequently was struck down. And when that was struck down, it was struck down under the Bakke decision in 78. So in 78, what happens, they say, well, no, you can't do this quota thing. You can't say there's a specific number that you've got to achieve that's set aside. They're going to call that reverse discrimination and say you can't do that. But they then said, under the Bakke decision in 78 with affirmative action, that what you can do is that you can use race as a factor in making the determination. You can give points however you want to do it. It can't be a deciding factor, but it can be a factor that's being used in order to do admissions and everything else, and hiring, all that comes along with it. Well, as we've moved forward to 2023, we came across the Supreme Court now has come out with the Students for Fair Admissions decision. And so what that has done is said, you know what, we're not even going to permit you now to use that as a factor to be considered have race as the factor to be considered. We're now to the point that we're a colorblind society, and racism is all behind us. So no, you can't even use that now as a determining factor for admissions into the universities. And so that's where we come to where we stand now. And now we're seeing that that decision begin to bleed over, if you will, into the private sector. As you're going to see it going into the private business and enterprises and everything else. You're going to see that bleeding through all of that, and that reasoning going through all of that. During the 80s, you had federal set-aside programs from federal contracts. Congressman Mitchell was a big part of the minority set-aside program, where they had to set aside 10% of federal contracts for women and blacks, for the most part, African Americans. That has been done away with, so that's no longer there. So it's the erosion of all this that now brings us to where we are today. And the diversity, equity, and inclusion that we talk about, it really all came about as a part of that affirmative action that they were trying to diversify, to include, to open it up, so that women and minorities, or women and African Americans and other people of color would have the opportunity to excel in these areas, and they could be encouraged and brought in to different positions where they had historically been locked out. So that's what the diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about. And that's sort of the history of it that brings us up to where we are today, Santita.
Attorney Mark Fancher, but although white women have been the greatest beneficiaries, this really is an outgrowth of the civil rights movement and the historical wrongs wrought upon Black people, right? And but everybody benefited from our advances, and that's fair. That's important, because America's been unfair to a whole lot of people for a long time. But now here we are, and a big driver of middle class life for Black people have been these solid civil service jobs in government. Mm-hmm. And government, quite frankly, up until now, has not been able to work without these civil servants. That's over. I mean, what do you make of this? And then, of course, when people who speak Spanish, but that is their native tongue, and in fact, for the record, everybody, it is the most widely spoken language in the hemisphere, in the Americas. It's not English, it's not French, it's Spanish. More people speak Spanish in North, Central, and South America than any language that is spoken. Let us be clear on that. Now, is it still the language of the conqueror? Yes. But it's still the language that's spoken. And so is English, by the way. Do I look like I'm English? No, but that's what I speak. So there's that. Attorney Mark Fancher, what do you make of this?
Well, I think that ultimately the controversy really is grounded in white fear. And I'll come back to that, and white comfort, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But to the extent that DEI in particular has not been feared by the private sector, it has very much to do with a couple of things. One is that they have done studies to determine that that corporations are more profitable, they're more productive when they have diverse workforces. And so it has been important to many in the private sector to ensure that they are able to have representation from a number of different communities working to help to advance and to achieve their profit motive. The other aspect of this that's important in the private sector is that there are civil rights laws that govern how they function. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act ensures, or is intended to ensure, that when people go to work, that they don't experience a hostile work environment, that they're not having to listen to racial epithets or jokes which are really not jokes at all, but and which are very offensive on a sexual level and other things. And so DEI has played an important role in helping to ensure that the workplace is one that is respectful, that people who are employees understand that there are limits, that they are aware and sensitive to the concerns that particular employees might have because of their race, their nationality, their ethnicity, their language, their sexual orientation, and that type of thing. And beyond the fears that many in the white community have about being displaced by marginalized groups and people of color, is on a very basic level, a certain level of irritation and annoyance that they confess to things that are associated with DEI. They don't like the idea that they can't make these jokes, these racist jokes on the job without having somebody taking them to task or them being disciplined. They don't like the idea that they can't go around and engage in sexual harassment without somebody taking them to task for having done that. They're very uncomfortable with it. They, as white people, are supposed to be privileged enough that they can do these things and say these things without anybody complaining about it. And they've even come up with a term for it. When they do things that are offensive and somebody complains about it, then they are labeled as quote unquote snowflakes. And the implication is that you can't take it, that all that I'm doing is making a joke. All that I'm doing is saying something that I'm intending to be humorous or which amuses me, and you just can't take it. You're not tough enough to take it. And the irony of it is that when you start to talk about things, serious things related to race relations or racial things, then they can't take it. They want to shut that down. There you go, playing the race card. Shut up. Don't say anything about that. And you dare not call them a racist, because then they'll just lose their minds. I'm not racist. They can't take it. And so they're the ones that are extremely sensitive. And this DEI stuff is really running counter to what they believe is necessary for their personal comfort. And so that's a big part of that. And as I mentioned before, the whole Trump phenomenon is driven by white fear and white paranoia. They have looked at the demographic projections, and they hear things about how white people are going to become a minority. In a number of years, they see the increasing the increasing representation of people of color in positions of authority, and it scares them. It really terrifies them, because they also have an unjustified and unwarranted fear that somehow once these people of color do become the dominant group within the country, that they're going to embark on a campaign of vengeance. And that it's really fueled by their private beliefs and understanding of the historic oppression that plagues this country, and that they somehow are responsible, and that they're going to be blamed for it, and that this revenge is going to take place. And so it's necessary for them to arm themselves heavily, to organize themselves into militias, to prepare for the coming race war, because all of these things are going to unfold. The white working class in this country, by and large, and not even just the white working class, extends up into many other groups. They are a very disturbed group, and the only solution I've long said is mass psychotherapy. And I don't know who's going to bankroll that.
You know what? It's a funny thing. I was talking with my cousin, and she's very prominent in her space, and she's a lawyer and all of that. And she said, what's amazing to me is how comfortable white people are now. She's one of the only blacks in her space. That they're so comfortable telling me that Trump is not bad. And she said, and I really get the sense that many of them actually voted for him. And she said, these are the liberal types. And she's not liberal at all. She's my cousin, I love her. So that's enough. But she's socially conservative, but I am too. It's just I'm more progressive in some other things, but that's cool. I mean, I don't have a problem with that at all. I said, let me let you in on the little secret. Most white people voted for Trump in 2016, 2020, and 24. Okay? But he kept adding black people and Hispanic people and Asian people. He's been very, people are tired of the duopoly, the two-party system. So let's just get real with that. I said, so I don't know how this is going to work out for a lot of these black and brown people who voted for Trump because many of them are going to lose their jobs. But, I'm here for it. It's not that we've not been on this track for a long time because, quite frankly, Daryl, Attorney Fancher, Attorney Jones, Attorney Fancher, Attorney O'Neill, Ariel Gold, as soon as those civil rights laws of the 60s were signed, there was a pushback. So this didn't start with Trump. This is culminating. Because he's not afraid to outwardly make the cultural shift. And I'm glad that you really helped us to understand how this will impact the workplace, Mark Fancher. Because, Attorney Terry O'Neill, I'm like, does this mean you can't sue if someone makes a genuinely offensive remark? As women, we have to deal with that. As a black woman, I got to deal with the black thing and the woman thing. And believe me, they're equally as weighted. They are. As a woman, I can tell you that. It's a horrible thing because you get it from all sides. You just do. Attorney Terry O'Neill, what do you make of this now? Because now we're beginning to see the impact upon the culture. You're still muted, but there you go.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I just want to, a couple of things to be very clear. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 that prohibited workplace discrimination was, as Mark has said, primarily benefited white women. Why? Obviously, because white women came into the space with race privilege. Let me just rephrase that a little bit. White cishet women, cisgender heterosexual women, they come into the workspace with gender identity privilege, with gender orientation privilege, with race privilege, and with class privilege, and with education privilege. So you had a lot of women, because of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, including sex discrimination, that suddenly they're going to law school. They're going to get their master's degrees, and they are beginning to sort of move into the workspace very much ahead of Black women and ahead of Black men. So indeed, the civil rights laws were really much more just on the numbers. White women benefited much more greatly from the civil rights laws than people of color, men or women, did. So that, that's just a reality. Now, by doing away with DEI, that is going to impact white women, white cisgender heterosexual women. They are going to be impacted in a negative way, not as because they have all of these other privileges, not as much. But Michael Harriot, who writes for The Root and is on Substack, recently reminded us, however much harm that Trump is doing to white workers, like all of these civil servants that he has just put on paid leave and presumably will lay off in the next 60 days. When white people catch a cold, Black Americans get the flu. So, and Harriet was talking about people who very understandably are saying things like, yeah, y'all F around, now you're going to find out. But the problem with that, I'm not doing anything for you. You can find out now what you effed around and got, is that it's really much more damaging and much more harmful to our siblings of color than it is to white women. And I think it is incumbent on white women, especially those who did not vote for the monstrous impacts that we are having. It's incumbent on all of us to recognize that we need to be there for our siblings. There were many of us who tried to be there, who tried to elect the first Black woman president of the United States. Now we need to double down on behalf of our siblings of color, and our transgender and LGBTQ siblings. So it's how do we do that? everyone who's listening right now, Santita, I just hope that they will think of one thing. Think of one thing you can do. When today, this afternoon at 5 o'clock Central Time, I'm going on a phone bank to encourage people who are already engaged who pay attention to local politics here in Tennessee. And I'm going on a phone bank to urge them to call their legislators and tell them not to vote for this disastrous school voucher scam that the governor is trying to promote. It's one thing. I can spend 2 hours reaching out to other engaged voters and asking them to do that. Everyone in listening distance from this radio show can think of one thing to do. And if it's a white person doing it, you need to think of it in terms of protecting the people who are going to get the flu, when we get a cough.
Well, I mean, the thing is, this happened so rapidly, Terry.
I know.
I mean, literally, he walked into office. He has, I'll give him this. Everything he said that he was going to do, he is doing.
He is, Santita. And think about the invasion of Iraq. This is shock and awe.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The military was very open and clear about their invasion of Iraq and what they intended to do. They intended to shock and awe the population of Iraq. And that is exactly what the Trump administration is doing to the United States. It's shock and awe. And part of the purpose of it is to make us frozen, is to freeze us with being overwhelmed with all of this stuff, which is why I say find one thing that you can do. Do one thing. Tell your friends, I'm doing one thing. What one thing are you going to do? This is not a time, honestly, for us to willy-nilly go out in the streets and put on a pink hat and shake our fist. This is a time for us to take an action. Even if it seems small bore, we are thinking globally, we are acting locally. Here's some good news. Gen Z, I had a fascinating conversation with a Gen Z person a couple of weeks ago who said that she is just starting college and she no longer trusts capitalism at all. And I said, you mean the racist, patriarchal, capitalist system of the United States? She said, yes, because it's burning up our planet and I don't trust capitalists. And they are racist and they are patriarchal. And that whole thing needs to change. So I'm on board with that. I think capitalism is a failed set of policies that is killing the planet. It is endangering the lives of human beings around the planet. And my hope is the people who will take one action, that if everybody takes one action and understands that what we need to do is dismantle racist patriarchal capitalism, then that is a means of rebuilding a society that we would actually be proud to live in.
Ariel, what do you have to say about this? I mean, because it is, I think that Attorney Terry O'Neill has it right. It has been shock and awe, but that's like the theater of it all. Attorney Jones and Attorney Fancher. I mean, really.
It wasn't theater though.
No, I mean, I'm not diminishing it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it is designed to take us off point and feel that this is something that their power is so overwhelming that we cannot fight back. I mean, just even with being told that there was this mandate, I'm coming in on a mandate. I've gotten more numbers than anyone. He got 49.8% of the vote. Kamala Harris got 48.6% of the vote. He overwhelmed in the Electoral College, but not with the actual vote. It's essentially split. So what do you make of this? I mean, because you still have this going on. I mean, and you got Larry Ellison coming out. He's talking. You got Elon Musk over here. He has an office in the West Wing. I mean, whew.
I hate to draw this comparison, but the Nazi takeover of Germany and Hitler's rise to power was not any more of a mandate in the way that it took over, and he lost elections first and went to jail in between, and then it was a margin. And I think what we are watching is probably the largest, most impactful or rapid rise of fascism since that time, and is of that degree. Of course, it looks different. It has different elements because it's occurring in a different country at a different time in different circumstances. But I think it is that dramatic and that scary. I want to take it a little step further than Mark Fancher, who said that Trumpism comes from white fear. I'm going to take it a step further than that and say that Trumpism is based in white supremacy, in Christian nationalism, and misogyny, and that's what we're looking at. And with the dismantling of DEI in the federal workforce, he didn't just remove DEI, and he didn't just encourage workers to turn each other in for practicing DEI, but he's required it. So it's very like Soviet Union, everybody spies on each other and turns each other in. But what he put into place is that if you don't turn in your colleague or boss or such, if you suspect that they might be practicing DEI, that then you can face consequences. And so the way that's going to play out is well-intentioned people in the hiring process are going to be afraid to hire people of color and women and LGBTQ plus people, because they're going to be afraid of losing their own jobs and being able to pay their own rent and support their own kids, because lest they be accused of this being an affirmative action DEI hire, or lest they, have an enemy in the workplace or somebody who wants their job who's could accuse them of that. And so we are going to see a real whitening of the federal workforce simply through that. And that comes from that happening from well-intentioned folks. And I want to kind of draw that back to Nazi Germany again. Like, this is the way this stuff happens. It isn't just the Trumpers or the MAGA, but this is the way it filters down, because folks want to pay their rent and feed their kids. And this is a huge deal that way. And I don't know yet kind of what it's going to take, but I agree. This is not a put on your pink hat and declare yourself non-compliant and you're resisting. This is much bigger than that and much scarier. And I was glad to see that the federal judge declared the attempt to remove birthright citizenship as unconstitutional, but I don't think this is the end of that push. And I think we have to be afraid of that. Let's not forget that he stacked the Supreme Court. So I do think we have to be that unnerved. This is not Trump round one. Yeah, he's following through with all of his promises, and we're watching the results, and it's shock and awe, but I don't know that it's going to slow down afterwards.
Oh, I don't think it's going to slow down. I mean, they've only just begun. Thank you, Karen and Richard Carpenter. This is the beginning, but this didn't start here.
No.
Okay, we're watching an acceleration, but this has been ongoing. And Mark, why don't you speak to this? And everyone can speak to this, but Ms. Ethelene Crenshaw, thank you for tuning in. Let's not just overlook the fact that 20% of Black men and 9% of Black women voted for Trump. Please hush with the racism scaremongering. It's not working. You want to speak to that, Mark? Anyone?
Oh, yeah. I did see that comment, and I think that it really speaks powerfully to the damage that capitalism has done. One of the things that it does is it reduces human beings who who have sensibilities, who have feelings and emotions, concern and compassion, the ability to think and plan and to empathize and to live as, for lack of a better term, as human beings. It reduces them to wild creatures of the wild who don't use all of those kinds of things. The conditions of capitalism are so harsh, so oppressive, and so trying that people are reduced to the point of just trying to survive, just trying to get by, just like an animal in the field that's just looking for something to kill and to eat. just foraging for food. And it deprives us of our humanity. And I think that that's what's happened to this country. It has become spiritually dead. And there are so many people who are just looking for a way forward. And in this country, the way forward is to achieve white privilege. Historically, white privilege was enjoyed only by people who were Anglo-Saxon. When you had these European immigrants coming from, Italy and from Poland, from Ireland and places like that, they weren't regarded as white. And it's only after it became necessary for social and political and economic reasons to expand the white population that these people were granted entry into that. And so what we're seeing now, reference was made to the fact that a significant number of Black and Latino people, women, voted for Trump. What's happening there is that these people who are so desperate and so frightened and struggling to survive are thinking in their really warped thinking that somehow they can achieve white privilege, that it is now their time, that Trump sort of implied that maybe he would bring them into the fold if they supported him, and they're looking to try and become white. And you look at Latinos who look down on these immigrants coming across the border, it's because they, especially the ones who have achieved lawful residency status or citizenship, feel as though now I'm part of the club, I'm part of the group. And so I am able to look down on these people who are not and who are trying to get here, quote unquote, illegally. And so I see my interests more aligned with those who enjoy white privilege, which I now have. Obviously, these people are in for a very rude awakening. Vivek Ramaswamy has learned that, surprise of surprises, he's a brown person and he's being treated just like all other brown people. Byron Donalds, who was out there beating the drum for Donald Trump, never got even a passing opportunity to even be considered for a position in the administration. Tim Scott, who fell down on his knees and licked Trump's boots, hugged his knees and told him, "I love you." And he got not even an opportunity. And you look at Trump's administration and you see how white it is. And so it's unfortunate that all of these people are in for a rude surprise when they see what this man is really all about, and that this is really a Nazi regime that we're dealing with, a fascist regime. But that's the way they roll. And unfortunately, people who are desperate and who are just looking to cling to anything that they think is going to help them survive delude themselves into believing that now is my time to become white.
No, go on, Terry. I mean, everybody open up your mics, jump on in.
Thank you so much for that, Mark. And let me, I just want to just add that that this level of desperation has been 40 years in the making. It has been 40 years of concerted effort by capitalists to put so many people in such a desperate situation that I don't remember the number, but it is some huge percentage of Americans who don't have $400 in their savings account that they could pay for an emergency they came up. If their car broke down and it took $400 to fix it, they don't have it.
And like several years ago, it was 47%. That's several years ago. Now and people can't afford groceries, so you know the number.
And it's higher now. So yeah, this is absolutely capitalism working as designed. This is why so many people who are paying attention understand that the only way out of this is to dismantle the racist, patriarchal capitalist system we're living in.
Well, Ethelina, I'm not picking on you. We're fascinated by what you're saying. I voted for Trump, and I can assure you that I am not trying to be white. Dr. King and Reverend Jesse Jackson are my heroes. I'm fed up with the Democrats, the Congressional Black Caucus, and all of the other organizations and entities that are worthless to the cause of Blacks. Were it not for my respect for Jesse Jackson and his daughter, I wouldn't even sit here and listen to this garbage. But, and Miss Etheline, I hear you, but does anyone want to jump in here?
Yeah. I want to say I get that. Like I can understand absolutely why people would vote for Trump. And it is the failure of liberalism and the Democratic Party to do anything significant. And Trump is offering a radical change, and he is hearing that people are fed up. I mean, those economic circumstances that we're describing, that again was the precursor to the rise of Nazism. It was folks not being able to pay their rent or afford their groceries. And Trump is speaking to that. And he is speaking like, I heard, when John Bolton lost his security detail, and I just can't feel sorry for John Bolton. Sorry. But anyway, Trump called him a warmonger. He's a warmonger, and we have been filling the coffers of the weapons manufacturers and not the farmers and the people, working our jobs and raising our food and raising our children and all of that. And Trump is speaking about that. And that is all so true. And then honestly, we hear the Democratic Party right now just doing what they do of spewing garbage. Well, next time we need to raise more money than we raised last time, because last time we raised tons of money and it got us nowhere, but let's do the whole thing again. Right. And we need, that type of radicalism that, Trump is speaking to, but about that's about humanity. Because you're right, Mark. This system is built on dehumanization and lack of care for people. So we need, a radical option that is based in empathy and humanity and care for each other. And we are a long ways from there right now.
Can I just add, just real quickly, Trump is speaking to that. He is lying to that when he speaks to it. He is saying, I recognize all of this and I'm trying to help you. The I'm trying to help you part is false, categorically false, but he is speaking to it.
Because then we've got Elon Musk behind him with his gestures that just look like big aisles.
But let me just say this as you jump in, Mark, just before you. Elon Musk and Larry Ellison and all these guys were going to be behind Kamala if she got in. Because I think we need to be honest with everybody and just say that's how the system works.
Right.
I mean, and so when I see Miss Ethelene, there is a frustration and an anger because there are things that the Democrats have not done. The Democrats don't. I mean, Democrats are losing Black people, and they don't want to deal with that. And Black folks are their base.
And union folks.
Yeah, but I mean, they can't win anything without Black people. Period. And they are losing Black people.
And they're not really trying hard to keep Black people.
No, they're not.
Yeah, I think this, this is a point that really needs to be understood, and I thank my sister for raising it, because it provides the opportunity to explain it. First of all, and just as a footnote, when I suggest that people are trying to be white, I'm not saying literally that they're trying to change their racial identity. They want the privileges that go with historically being white. But more important than that, we have to understand the game that has been played. Capitalism understands that people aren't going to sit still for the type of grinding oppression that they've had to endure. And what it does in order to trick the people is it tricks them into thinking that they have options and that they have opportunities to make change within a system that they control. So they give you a Republican Party, they give you a Democratic Party, and they control both of them. And both of those parties are dedicated, absolutely committed to ensuring that the capitalist system continues and that the corporations and the rich people that benefit from it continue to get richer and richer, and that the poor people and the oppressed continue to suffer. So they deceive you. You look at what the Democratic Party is doing and you say, I'm disgusted by what the Democratic Party is doing. And you should be, because they are as much a part of the oppressive system as the Republican Party. And so you say, well, then what I'm going to do, since the Democrats have let me down, is I'm going to go to the Republicans, which is precisely what the capitalists want you to do. They want you to only look at those two options and not look at the other option, which is to destroy the entire system. When you have respect for a Reverend Jesse Jackson, you respect him because he was not playing their game. He was speaking to the things that you want anybody who's in leadership to speak to. He was talking without explicitly saying revolution. He was talking about fundamental change in what we have, making sure that the oppressed and the despised and the damned are included and looked out for. And so that's why he could never be president. But you look at the people who are, and they all sold you out. So all I'm saying is don't get played. Don't get deceived into thinking that just because you're not getting relief in the Democratic Party, that you're going to get it from Donald Trump or the Republicans. You've got to think revolution. That's the only way that you're going to get relief, or any of us will. Both parties must go.
Well, you know, she does agree with you. She said, I agree. The problem is the Democrats and the Republicans. You've been very quiet. I always have to be very, very careful when Attorney Daryl Jones is quiet. He's real quiet for me. That's why. Oh yeah, don't mute. Let him hear it, because when he gets quiet, I'm like, what is going on in that mind of yours?
Well, Santita, I think it's a little bit of what everyone has said that I think is accurate, but I think there's something that that was missing, and that is for the Democratic Party and the election cycle that it just went through, they were tone deaf. They were tone deaf. They were not hearing, I don't think, the hurt that people were feeling. They weren't hearing it. They weren't voicing it. The Democratic Party that I knew was a Democratic Party that would tap into that. It was a Democratic Party that that would say, "I'm not going to spend billions of dollars going over to to Gaza or anywhere else when I have millions of people that are hurting right here at home, and I'm not going to be a part of the party that says, yeah, you're hurting at home, but it's not as bad as you think that it is." And that's sort of the message that was being rolled out, that it's not as bad as you think it is. Well, if you're sitting there and you can't afford the food on your table, you got to choose between the medication and feeding your kids and that kind of stuff. That's problematic. And if you're not speaking to that, that's a problem. If you're not giving voice, this is the Democratic Party. It's supposed to be the big tent, the big open tent. You're not giving a voice, a position on the stage at your convention to talk about Gaza. It's not there. It's not there. But you want to tell me that you're the big party? Yeah. President-elect Trump did precisely that. He went to his base. He did not stray. He stayed precisely on message with regards to his message to his base. That's why they stayed with him. You ask about the underage, right? The undervote, the undercount, or whatever you want to call it, that Kamala Harris did. She didn't stay on the message of what the party had traditionally stood for. And I get it. She had 102 days, 107 days, whatever it was, and she was stuck with the message that was set for Joe Biden. But you can bring forth your own message. You can say, I differ on this issue. This is what I would do differently. This is what I feel. This is what I know exists. And that's what was not coming forward. And I think that's what President Trump was tapping into, is that he was there. Remember, even when we were talking about the migrant crisis, even with the migrant crisis, it never to me felt as though the Democratic Party took the necessary step of saying, this is a crisis and we've got to figure out how to fix it. I don't recall hearing that. What I do remember hearing is President-elect Trump or President Trump saying, those that are here illegally need to get out. I do remember hearing that. That's the message that resonates not just with his base, but with many of us that are the moderate Democrats, the liberal. It's going to register. If you're one of the people that cannot get a job, that you're seeing all this money go to Gaza, you're seeing all this money go all over the country or all over outside of the country, but not to your people, that's going to anger you. That's going to bother you. And so that's part of that message that I think really needs to be factored in to all of this. That, you know, I just came out of a conversation and it was somewhat troubling because a very good friend of mine who is a Republican, and her, you know, position was that she supports President Trump on the fiscal issues. It's the social issues that bother her. And the question then became, and I just hesitated to ask the question. Well, which one? How do you weigh it out? If you're making money, but people are being treated hatefully, does that make the more money you make? Is it okay? Do you forget that part? How do you balance that out? And I think that's a part of what we see happening with the numbers from this past election, that we saw people that were saying, you know what, I've tried this democratic process. I tried this democratic thing, and it ain't what I thought it was going to be. My money isn't right. My job situation isn't right. Can't provide for my kids, and I see money going to illegals that are coming into the country and going to people that are not Americans outside the country. I need a change, and I think that's a large part of what we saw happening.
Well, because historically, Donald Trump has never fit neatly into either party. He was going to run for president under Ross Perot's banner in 2000. He was mulling the idea. And, as Ethylene, I miss Ethylene, I wanted to state, hey, she is a mighty, mighty graduate of the FAMU Law School. So as she said, I'm good. We respect you. I hear you. And Robert Williams has just said to you, Daryl, facts. And Deborah Wells has said, as if Trump is going to be better for us as Black people. Trump is right now actively all week doing whatever he can to abolish, destroy, and undermine any and all efforts made to help Black people going back to 1868. At least the Dems will work to help people and not to harm, like Trump and the Republicans are doing right now. No, the Dems aren't perfect, but please stop making false equivalencies between the two parties. I hear you, but the thing is, they're not fighting hard enough. You know what? I was reading something this morning. I'm going to get closing thoughts from everybody. Biden and Trump are the opposable thumbs of the establishment. I said, that's a brilliant way of putting it. You don't get this close to this thing, to this Oval Office, unless you are in it. Now, I don't know what Trump is going to do, because he just came across the wire that he is releasing. I don't know what redactions or what alterations that the FBI has made to the files, but the JFK and MLK and RFK files, assassination files, he's going to release. I'm with that. I just don't know what they have done to those files over the years, quite frankly, because many people are wondering what they did to the Zapruder film. Okay, but they have hurt. They have hurt America and Americans, because now they're no longer trusted, and he understands that. And Miss Ethylene, or Counselor Ethylene Crenshaw, we hear you. No one is attacking you for the choice that you made, because I understand your frustration. I do. Even as I'm heading to Washington with Ariel Gold to support Dr. Jim Zogby as he seeks to be vice chair of the party. But that having been said, I've been attacked by people who feel that I'm not sufficiently supportive enough of the Democratic Party. And, I hear you, but you're absolutely wrong. I have reserved the right to, as an adult, not only do I reserve the right, I have the obligation to criticize that which I see is wrong. I had a very dear friend who on this show said, as long as I'm Black, I'm going to be a Democrat. I said, I wouldn't say that. I'm not tying my blackness to the elephant or the mule. I'm not going to do that. No, not me. I tie myself, not even my color, my soul, to principle. I want somebody to end poverty. I want somebody to construct a floor beneath which no human being can fall. I came in on this, which is why, as you said, Mark Fancher, Reverend couldn't be president. What he did was set forth a blueprint that you needed to follow, because he ran on the most unpopular positions imaginable. When my father was getting some rest the other night, I walked over to him, gave him a kiss while he was in the bed. I said, "Phew, the longer I live, the more respect I have for you." And he looked at me and he said, "Hmm?" I said, "I don't know how you ran for president fighting for Mandela and fighting for the Palestinians and Israeli security. How'd you do that? How'd you say, no, we got to end poverty? No more war?" I said, "Daddy, either you're the bravest man I know or you are completely nuts." Well, I choose to believe that he kept and he stayed truthful to Dr. King's assignment. The biggest prize is not winning the presidency, it's setting the captive free,
Mhm.
it's healing the brokenhearted. And so people are going to vote. They're voting all kinds of ways because they're tired of what everybody's been offering. It's not working. So I'm going to go around this panel. So I'm going to get some closing thoughts from everybody because we're going to continue this conversation in the next hour to talk about really what DEI and affirmative action are actually and where we're going to go from here. What is the economic impact? Because it has already been proved that these corporations make money when they're diverse, when they're inclusive, and when there's equality. Now, they've made another kind of decision, but I'm trying to tell you, they want to replace y'all with robots. So you're dealing with some people on some other stuff, okay? So let's get right to it. Attorney Terry O'Neill, and everybody be of good cheer. Because you know what? This has brought us together and it's making us fight. Go on, Attorney Terry O'Neill, as you burn down the Bastille. She's storming. She's about
to storm the Bastille. I just want to agree with the person who commented that the false equivalencies between the Republicans and the Democrats. I totally agree with that. Republicans are very different from the Democrats. Neither one of them is doing what we need. The Democrats do not have the courage of what they say their convictions are. Just look at the verbal assurances they gave about voting rights and the total lack of action at the national level around voting rights. Look at the verbal assurances they gave about women's equality and the total lack of action until it was far too little too late on the Equal Rights Amendment. The 38th state ratified the Equal Rights Amendment back in 19. It's now 2024. And suddenly the Democratic president says he thinks it's, come on. What it shows is the Democrats, they want to blah, 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 but they do not want to take meaningful action. That's different from Republicans who are taking swift and vicious, meaningful action to crush anyone who is not white, male, cisgender, and heterosexual. So they are very different. Neither one of us gives us what we need.
Opposable thumbs of the establishment. Attorney Daryl Jones.
Santita, I agree wholeheartedly with what Terry has laid out. But the other thing that I try to look forward, right, and not necessarily looking back. And what we have coming forward, we see the policies that are coming out of this administration. We see the executive orders and the meanness and the nastiness and the non-civilness of what's coming out of there. But what I think we have to focus on is 2026, because we've got to start now identifying how we're going to serve as the block for a lot of the executive orders and policy pieces that are coming out there. So we've got to be certain that we're putting candidates in place that will be willing to stand up and fight and be against the policies that the administration are putting out that are against our community. That's where the bottom line is that we've got to start right now. The election cycle for 2026 has already started. And, we have got to be certain that we're getting our pieces in place for that election cycle and finding the candidates that are going to stand with us and stay with us and not stray when the hard winds start coming against us.
Quite frankly, whatever ticket they choose to be on, either we support the process of voting and getting people involved or not.
Right.
I'm about principle, not party.
Right.
I want people to be involved, and that's where I have it. Ariel Gold.
Yeah, thank you, Daryl. You're right. Let's that's where our power and our strength is, and we need to be getting ready for that. And that's why I am excited that Dr. Zogby is running for vice chair of the Democratic Party, because we reform and significant change is necessary, and he's been fighting for that in that party for 30 years.
40, 50.
He's well in the party specifically for over 30.
Yeah, I mean he's
been a thorn in the party
period.
side, and so yeah, that's part of what we need to be prepared for 2026, because that is our best tool right now. And let's remember that we are not I liked what you said, Santita, too. This is about setting the captives free. Let's remember Dr. King. We fight a system, not people. So we're not fighting against the people who voted for Trump or the MAGA people or any of that. We are all Americans, and we need to be fighting with that's the power of nonviolence. It's because we can't mirror that hatred and violence. We can't rise to it, right? Let's face it, we don't have the level of hatred and violence and weapons and power. So that's the beauty of nonviolence, is it's a mirror image. So we have to mirror setting the captives free, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, and housing the unhoused, and giving sanctuary to the refugee and the migrant. So let's stay really true to ourselves, like Reverend Jackson. Let's remember that in these tough times, where we have so much stacked against us. I'll leave it there.
No. Mark, want to close this out?
Yeah, and I'm going to stick with the idea that the two parties are exactly the same. They just don't look the same. I'm wise to the con. I know exactly what they're doing. Part of what they have to sell the public is the idea that they have options, that they have alternatives. And so they distinguish the two parties in the most superficial ways. The capitalists really don't care about social issues and concerns. When it comes to birth, death, marriage, sex, the Democratic Party can have all of those things. They don't care. That doesn't make them money. But when it comes to war and war machinery, and when it comes to the economy and money, that's what they care about. And both parties are down with that program. So the Democratic Party can put forth a nicer face on social issues, but it means nothing to me when they're going to go right across the ocean and bomb the daylights out of Gaza and kill close to 250,000 innocent people. You can't tell me that either of those two parties have any redeeming value. They both must be destroyed.
Well, either we believe in justice. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in justice cannot rest. And you have to fight for that. And Miss Etheline, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I'm not one of these persons who's going to attack you for your vote, because I think that it was grounded in principle, in the highest principles. I think that you were really trying. I don't have to agree with you, but I certainly do respect your intentions. That having been said, we have to have the courage to vote our hopes and not our fears. You know who made a commercial to that effect? That was something that Reverend used to talk about all the time. Bill Cosby, God bless him, at the height of the Cosby Show's fame, and before the Cosby Show, one of our original supporters was Dr. Bill and Dr. Camille Cosby, when it was unpopular. And had it not been for them, my parents wouldn't have been able to run, because you can't make any money or anything. Okay. And he sat on the set of the Cosby Show in 1988 and gave his endorsement to Reverend. He said, you get an opportunity. He said, we vote every 2 years, every 4 years. And you vote and you're like, I vote, I'm just going to vote. He said, now you actually get a chance to vote for someone you believe in, someone you really, really, really believe is going to do right by you. And I believe he is. That's why I'm voting for Jesse Jackson. And he did it not on the street. He did it on the set of The Cosby Show, the most popular sitcom in the history of American television. And I thank God for that. Vote your hopes, not your fears. Vote your hopes, not your fears. And you push the elected officials. where you want them to go, because they're being pulled by the oligarchs. That's how it works in politics, everybody. Either you vote the dark money out of it, or this is what we're going to get. The politicians, they're doing the best that they can, but they ain't in charge. You get in there and it's the business people, the oligarchs are in charge. So let's go up in our politics. And do you want to be free or do you want to be a slave? What you want? That's it. So come on, everybody, because they are purging these jobs, and more than that, these opportunities. The Black, brown, and LGBTQ, all these people are not getting accepted into these colleges and universities, the PWI institutions, predominantly white institutions, the Ivies and all of that, at the rates that they were before this ended. HBCUs don't have enough space to take in the Black students who are going to be rejected from these schools. Ain't got enough space. So what are we going to do? We're not building universities. We build bombs. Aren't you tired of that? We don't even have 1 million hospital beds for 340 million people. Aren't you tired of that? What? We don't have 1 million beds in the United States to take care of sick people. That's not even 1%. 1% would be 3.4 million beds. Nobody's building a hospital. And if you build it, you can't afford to be in it, even if you scrub the floors. Now, you ought to be tired of that. You ought to be tired of that. Wed yourself, marry a principal, or the principal, not a party, and push them both to do right by you. I hope Trump does better this time. And I know he's not going to do it until I push him. I'm not going to sit out here and complain. I'm going to push him. And if he doesn't do what I need him to do, I'm going to keep on pushing and I'm going to keep on marching. That's what you need to do. Because it's your country, it's your government. Make it work for you. That's all you need to do. That's your obligation. Now is not the time to not watch the inauguration, not fool with him, because I know you don't know what anybody's going to do. Did you know you were going to end up with a genocide in Gaza? Huh?
Or he was going to get a ceasefire?
Did you think you were not going to be able to get an executive order to save your voting rights? Huh? Think about that. Enough. Enough. So let's get to work, everybody. I love you. Next hour, we're going to talk about what DEI and what affirmative action really are and what their economic impact will be. A lot of people losing their jobs, and they're going to lose these houses, y'all. They're not going to be able to send their kids to school. And that's just the beginning. And when you call the government, you will be dealing with artificial intelligence. Artificial is just that fake intelligence. You'll not be dealing with people. That is their plan. So if you're not going to have people working, where are we supposed to go? Think about that. Love you, everybody. See you in the next hour. Love you. Love you, Terry.